Hey everybody, I'm Ashley Abraham and I'm a former DUI prosecutor, and today I want to talk about a crucial aspect of DUI law in Tennessee that not everyone is aware of: field sobriety tests. Specifically, I'll be covering why you aren't legally required to take these tests, how they impact your DUI case, and why understanding your rights can make a significant difference if you're pulled over on suspicion of DUI. What are field sobriety tests? Field sobriety tests are a series of physical and cognitive tests that law enforcement officers use in roadside to determine if a driver is impaired. The first test, the horizontal gaze and nystagmus test, involves the officer asking the driver to follow a pen or finger with their eyes. The officer is looking for involuntary eye movements that may indicate impairment. The second test, the walk and turn. Here, the driver is asked to walk in a straight line, heel to toe, turn around, and walk back in the same manner. This test evaluates balance, coordination, and the ability to follow instructions. The third test, the one-leg stand. The driver is asked to stand on one leg while counting aloud. This test examines balance, motor skills, and attention. These tests may seem straightforward, but they're actually challenging even under the best circumstances. Factors like uneven ground, poor lighting, fatigue, nervousness, or even medical conditions can affect your performance. And while these tests are designed to help officers gauge impairment, they're not foolproof. Therefore, it's important to know your rights surrounding them. In Tennessee, drivers are not legally required to take field sobriety tests. Unlike chemical tests such as breathalyzer or blood tests, which fall under Tennessee's implied consent law, there's no legal penalty for refusing a field sobriety test. So, if an officer asks you to perform these tests, you have the right to say no. Refusing field sobriety tests can be a strategic decision, particularly because these tests are subjective. There's no pass or fail in the traditional sense. It's up to the officer's judgment on whether you passed or failed. If you're feeling nervous or if conditions are unfavorable, this could subjectively work against you. Now, you might wonder why someone would refuse these tests. There are a few reasons. The tests are subjective. As mentioned, field sobriety tests rely heavily on the officer's judgment. Officers may perceive a slight stumble or hesitation as a sign of impairment, even if there are other explanations for it. The difficulty of the tests. Many people find these tests challenging even if they're completely sober. For example, maintaining balance on one leg can be difficult, especially on an uneven surface or if you have any medical or physical conditions. Evidentiary impact. Field sobriety tests can provide evidence against you in a DUI case. If you perform poorly, even for reasons unrelated to alcohol, this can be used to support the officer's claim of impairment, making it harder to defend yourself in court. By declining to take these tests, you may reduce the amount of evidence law enforcement has to justify the arrest or charge for DUI. What is the impact on a DUI case when you refuse your field sobriety test? If you refuse field sobriety tests, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to avoid a DUI charge, but it can impact the evidence the state has against you. When you decline field sobriety tests, the officer may still have other observations, such as erratic driving, the smell of alcohol, or slurred speech, which can support probable cause. However, without the field sobriety test, the officer may have less evidence to use in court. In many cases, the absence of field sobriety tests results can make it harder for prosecutors to prove impairment, especially if you performed well on other indicators or if your BAC was below the legal limit. Remember, though, that an officer can still request a chemical test if they have probable cause, and refusing a chemical test does come with penalties under Tennessee's implied consent law. So, what do you say if you decide to decline? If you choose to decline a field sobriety test, it's essential to do so respectfully. Here's an example of how you might say it. Officer, I understand you're doing your job, but I respectfully decline to perform field sobriety tests. Being polite and calm can go a long way. Officers are used to people who are nervous or argumentative, and staying composed can work in your favor. So what are the potential defenses for DUI without field sobriety tests? If you're charged with DUI after refusing field sobriety tests, a skilled attorney can often use this to your advantage. For example, lack of probable cause. If the officer based most of their probable cause on a refusal to perform field sobriety tests rather than clear indicators of impairment, this could be a point of defense. If they're relying on blood test results, without field sobriety tests, the state may need to rely more heavily on blood test results. If those results are borderline or below the legal limit, it can strengthen your defense. Challenging the officer's observations. If your refusal led to an arrest, your attorney can work to challenge the officer's subjective observations, like slurred speech or the smell of alcohol, especially if these are inconsistent with other evidence. Let's summarize what you should keep in mind if you're pulled over on suspicion of DUI in Tennessee. You have the right to refuse. Remember, field sobriety tests are voluntary. You don't have to take them, and refusing does not carry any automatic penalties. Be aware of implied consent. While you can refuse field sobriety tests, remember that blood tests are different under Tennessee's implied consent law. Refusing these can lead to a license suspension. Stay calm and respectful. If you choose to decline field sobriety tests, do so politely. Being respectful could help keep the situation from escalating. And consult an attorney if you're charged with DUI, especially after refusing field sobriety tests. They can evaluate the details of your case and may be able to reduce or dismiss the charges based on lack of evidence. In Tennessee, field sobriety tests are not mandatory, and you have the right to refuse them without immediate penalty. By understanding your rights and making informed decisions during a traffic stop, you can protect yourself and ensure that any evidence collected is fair and accurate. If you or someone you know is facing DUI charges, reach out to a knowledgeable attorney who can provide guidance and help defend your rights. Thanks for watching. Drive safely.